Hi, I'd like to welcome you, Rob, to a fireside chat with the Cinema Esports Alliance Corporation, which I call the CEAC. And I want to remind everybody that the goal of the CEAC is to help to bridge the gap and introduce both sides, cinema and esports and gaming, and help people that have a need with answers. And I bring to you Robb Chiarini, who I've known now for a couple of years, because Rob has a lot of insight and a lot of background and a lot of important information that he can share with the cinemas. So hi, Rob.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
So Rob, could you take us back a little bit? You and I have known each other for a few years now. Tell everybody a little bit about your background and why I came to you. You're like you and Todd Harris were the first two people that I reached out to in this industry. So give us a little backstory on you.
Todd's such good people. Yeah, so yeah, this is the older than I look question. I have been exceptionally fortunate across my career to have many once-in-a-lifetime opportunities, all centered around building and scaling businesses. I spent 16 years in telecommunications, developing organizations and solutions engineering there, but I've always been a player, a gamer, and somewhat competitive. I definitely played. I spent a lot of my time in arcades, which begins to date me. But playing competitively, but really taking that passion and started organizing tournaments, the things we called before we called esports, just plain old tournaments and events. And then those grassroots community efforts enabled me to transition into the gaming world full-time. And I've had, again, once in a lifetime opportunities, spending time at IGN, at Blizzard, and at Ubisoft, building esports and gaming communities around that. And this last year, I've been so lucky to be able to focus on some different facets in gaming that have, what kind of brought me here is helping empower the community. So at gamers.vote, helping empower gamers to take part in democracy, using their voices other than just complaining about this or that, or helping effect change, making some real meaningful steps forward in the space of democracy. And then I have been spending a ton of time helping organizational efforts inside of the gaming space, whether it's platforms or programming or tech or AI or new gaming and entertainment facilities. I sit on several different advisory boards, and whether it's working with teams or clients or the boards, in a way I've been able to contribute now in a different way, more impactful than I have in what has come before. So I can be more thankful for what I've been able to do in this space.
And just so that we can be clear with anybody that's listening to this interview or this fireside chat, if anybody wants to reach out to you, I can provide them with your LinkedIn contact, correct? And then they can talk to you if they have a need, because I think that's the valuable part of what I'm trying to do is find those important resources like you, where you're going to tell people the straight dope, not just what they want to hear, but what they need to hear.
Or just at least my perspective of the things, right? Whether it's right, wrong, whatever those things are, I definitely have feedback input. I'm always happy to help folks in the space. I think if you asked many people about me, they would probably say the same thing. I'm a super helper, want to just move people along. So yeah, please do.
So can you tell us a little bit about any activations or any participation you've had with cinemas so far?
So cinemas, yeah. And so, I have done a bunch of stuff in the past in my community efforts, running different events. I think, one of the things we were going to talk about is some of the different proud moments or things I have been a part of over the years, but I've done a ton of activations. I know it's fine over gaming events, bringing gaming stuff to cinemas. So in my early days, we'd bring like Gears of War tournaments or other activities inside of cinemas. We'd pair them up with different movie thematics. I had a friend that operated an independent theater out here in Arizona, where I grew up. And, just bringing gaming interests and advocacy around the cinema stuff. It's a great place to, pair up, as it were.
And when you did some of these events, what were some of the things that you had to overcome? Because I do find there's a fair amount of, oh, I didn't knows when it comes to the cinemas on their side. So what did you run up against?
So it depends on the scope and the scale of most of those activities. Like, for the most part, we were self-contained, right? So we would take over a section of the lobby or some area. We wouldn't take over theater space because they couldn't afford to do that, didn't want to do that, didn't have the facilities to do that. And theaters themselves do not lend themselves well to gaming activities. Not really. Not the facilities as they sit now. They're great for going and viewing. They're difficult for participation at different events. So we would go there. We would take over sections of the lobby, different areas, and bring people in and hang out and do things around that. So with that, our constraints were our own about like bringing tables, bringing things, bringing all the monitors, all the units and whatnot and the community to be a part of it.
And when the community came, because you mentioned grassroots, and I think that's something really important that I think every cinema should learn and understand is how to activate a grassroots opportunity. How did you go and get your local community to come?
So yeah, I mean, for me personally, I was part of the community.
Okay.
So, in finding out, and it's twofold. It's groups reaching out and us reaching out. So as an organizer, I'm always looking for places to go. Where can I be? Where can I take these group of people and do something with? Because we're always looking for facilities, right? Some place where we can grow and have things, whether it's power or just a space to be able to do those and meet up, whether it's in an arcade or whatever the case might be, depending on the gaming culture. And so, finding the people and making sure that they're aware and happy to have us there. If you think about, I'll use theaters as an example, or even like I did a bunch of events at Best Buy and Microsoft Store. It's, those units are set up for a specific use case. And so sometimes they have some available space, sometimes they don't. Those are queue line areas. So it depends on what's happening with the greater part of the venue, but finding the place where we can actually execute and bring there. And so back to me being a community person, I would bring the community. We'd be like, hey, we're running our events here. So I was the organizer bringing that, and I paired with a place like them to be the facility.
So if a cinema wanted to find someone like you to help them to do this outreach, because I feel like this is a little bit of an issue that most cinemas have, is when it comes to marketing, the past experience that they've had is that there's a film being released and the studio does the promotion of the film. So how could we help the cinemas identify with where to do outreach? Like how could they find someone?
Yeah, I mean, I would start with who works there. I would imagine that given the age and demographic of many of the employees, gamers are a growing amount, a part of the demographic in the world. People who play games. They probably know somebody that knows somebody or is somebody that's doing that kind of outreach, that's doing those actually events in the community. So I would start inwardly, like of the employees and people you've got, have a conversation with them. Hey, are you having interest? Do you have any friends that like to do gaming things? Here's what I'm trying to do. Maybe there's some people that have contacts. That's the first place I would look, is who do you already know? Who's in the network?
Yeah, I love that. Actually, that's quite cool. So where do you see the future? Like, is if you had a crystal ball, what would Robb say to this audience of where their growth could be? Because right now there's a lack of content. That's the number one issue that they're dealing with, right? No, the studios are doing stuff in streaming and not providing this film content. Do you have a crystal ball that says to the cinemas, this is how you can take our community, gaming and esports, and turn it into something that's in your cinema?
So there's many steps, right? I think I love this quote. Go ahead, I'm sorry. About plans are worthless, but planning is everything, right? And so what we're trying to say is, no matter what you think you're going to do, plan for a bunch of different eventualities, plan for a bunch of different options, and try and experiment different things. What works in one market might not necessarily work in another market. Games and communities and interests vary by state, by city, by regions. And so I think there's a lot of trial and error with that. But I think the opportunities for cinemas in gaming, and not just esports, I think we talked about esports, but the greater gaming, because I think there's a huge opportunity there, is looking at how your business model works now. Are you a theater that doesn't have an install base? Meaning, do you have reward systems and mechanics to track your profiles of your attendees? Who do you know? Do you rely on big marketing to do all the pushes to you? How are you found? How do people think about you in the space? And then looking at your infrastructure, like what can you put in place to help facilitate the ease of gaming? As I mentioned, if you've gone to a theater, it's not really made for people to play games. The viewing experience is one thing, but most people compete on a different screen, right? And then that's projected in what people watch. How are you facilitating the seats and making sense of that? Are you using a staging area in front of the screen? It's a bunch of different infrastructure questions that need to be made. What's your schedule like? How much space do you have? I mean, there's so many things. There's no one size cookie cutter, but I think finding a way to start activating the gaming community, they're looking for experiences. And the same thing with the theaters themselves, right? We've seen with the rise of streaming platforms, you've seen the accessibility everywhere. We don't have to go to a place that's exclusive to watch the content anymore.
Right.
And so, when people coming there, they're looking for an experience. What is that like? Is it just big screen and loud sounds? Is it a sense of community? What are all these different things that you're doing to make that experience more meaningful that forces or drives people out of their homes to come be there, other than just exclusivity? Because that's not going to be something that can be written, I think, in the far future. I don't think that's a thing. I look at, you and I talk all the time. I have my own little case study demographic of kids from 2019 to 10 and watching how they consume content and what their interests are. And the 10-year-old is an example. Not only does he have an iPhone, an iPad, he's got his own screen, he's got a 56-inch TV in his room if he wants to, and he's got bigger ones everywhere. And he would rather consume information and videos on his little iPhone because he just lays wherever he wants and does that. He doesn't have as much interest in watching TV shows or movies because he's used to short form content. So what are you doing to appeal to someone like that in the next few years? That's going to be your demographic. Have them come out and be a part of what you're doing out there. Lots of questions.
So what are the things that I love these answers because it really is thought provocative. When these young people are, since you're so used to imbibing their content on their smaller devices, do you think that having somebody that they're familiar with, an icon, an influencer, or somebody that they've seen in a pro level, do you think having them somehow participate with these locations would be a valuable contribution to getting these young people maybe away from their phone to wanting to come in person?
Potentially. I mean, like, that's one of the levers, right? Levers, however you wish to word it. But
that.
It's one of the different triggers and things that we could use as influencer marketing or influencer engagement. That could be something that's meaningful. But one of the biggest issues for theaters is that they're location based.
Yes.
Right. And so the demographic that follows particular influencer Y, or creator, as I wish to call them, the creator, right? There might be a small group of people that are interested in that locality come there. Now, could you get people to travel there? Perhaps, but not on an ongoing basis, potentially. So how are you looking for those local creators or influencers, people that would be in that space that could come and be a part of that? That's part of the community. I mean, that's the biggest issue with the theater-based or location-based services is like, you need to pull from a certain demographic and now it might be 3 hours away. It might be only be 45 minutes away, whatever those things are, like how far people will go for that experience. And perhaps you can widen that by having multiple locations and things, but you have a different use case problem than, online per se. And I think there should be some online programming and things to help create awareness and attentiveness, especially with brands that go across different markets.
So I'm glad you mentioned that because I also agree with you there. How would you suggest to a cinema how could they create something online that they could then take to in real life? What would be some suggestions that you might have for them?
Yeah. So again, that's part of the overall plan and strategy and what we want to do to market. Because I think, if I'm a theater, I'm thinking of not just one or the other thing. It's like, what is my value proposition for someone to attend my facility at a high level? Yes. So what are those things? What are those exclusives? Whether it's, I'm going to make something up, gourmet popcorn, that might be a little bit rote, but whatever. Just like, what is the experience of that? Maybe you change the way that your food and beverage is served in a way that's so interesting that people come, and being able to market that to a certain demographic. What are the experiences that you're building in? You and I talked way back in the day about the motion chairs and things. Like, what are all these different elements that you could pull on to create interest about coming to this facility? Because at the end of the day, it's people walking in the doors for an experience. The online piece could be, I know that there's some of them that do streaming platforms for different movies and different things. Could there be game content? Could there be marketing content around there? It's a lot about what do you as a theater, what are your resources, budgets, interests, and accessibility, what you want to do. And we have to sit down and really map that out. It's not there's no right one answer. There's a bunch of different checkboxes of activities that we could perform to do something like that.
And do you think that having like maybe online tournaments where they are the sponsor of it, what you name that, whether it's a first person shooter or Rocket League, something that anybody can play, Among Us, something that's fun that everyone can participate online, that cinema sponsors and talks to their loyalty club members because they communicate with them, that then they reward those people to come into a location. Do you think that might be a lever
it's absolutely one of the ways, right? Because if you think about an online program there, you could run it, you can operate it, you could sponsor it, you can sponsor somebody else's, you could create content for another one, you could partner with a group that's participating in a thing. There's so many different ways to be involved with that. I would say, again, it goes back to interest, ability, willingness, timeline, all these different things that, end up with a deliverable of some kind. But absolutely, I think that's the thing. We talked about, I'm on the board with Sandbox, and they're trying to help create activity around that. So that might be a way, as well as being part of that consortium of different groups. But and not saying that that's the only way. There's tons of ways. And so sitting down and talking about that is really what would need to happen.
And if I'm correct in understanding, Sandbox's goal is to build leagues, right? That are in real life leagues. Is that?
I think it's more than that. I think it's a bunch of different avenues around gaming, and the theater aspect is one angle on that, is the in-person and things, but a platform that helps create communities.
Yes. And then when it comes to in real life and in driving somebody in, do you think it's important for cinemas to have like a dedicated staff that maybe understands a little bit than just having the guy that rips the ticket and points you at a number of theater 7 to the left?
Experience. It goes back to experience. It depends on what it is. So the difference between watching a movie and having a gaming event is, when you watch a movie, you've got a one-to-many, right? There's probably one filmographer that goes up and starts the thing. And, other than once they come in the door, they kind of herd themselves into a spot. They sit down in their assigned seats or random seats. And then at some point, somebody closes the doors and turns off the lights and turns on the projector. And then 2 hours later, they come back. I mean, there's some quality checks and things in there, but the experience is wholly self-ran in a way. You can get up, you go get food, you do things. With a gaming event, because you're going to have transitions in and out, or equipment and hardware and resets, and just tech that can walk away. Like, you can't just leave that unattended. So that has a very different staffing requirement. And again, it depends on the scale of whether you have one unit or you have 4, you have a tournament. Because as you add more complexity, you would need to add more people to manage that. Or potentially working with community members to do that. It just depends on how you want to leverage that. Is that owned and operated? Is that working with them? Are they doing it? Are you just the venue, the space? A bunch of different ways to do that.
And how much participation could a publisher, would a publisher look at a cinema only if it was 100 locations? Or do you, from your past experience, do you feel like there might be this opportunity for cinema to reach out? Like, I just had someone today reach out, which I will send out to the CEAC members. They want to put on an event in Belarus. And they said, can you help us find who we can talk to that make sure that we're doing this and licensing this properly? And I said, let me touch base with my group, because that's a question that's going to be asked a lot.
Yeah, so the answer is maybe. When we talked before about, when I've run hundreds and hundreds and maybe even thousands of events at this point, I lost count. It's not a brag, it's just saying I've had a variety of different things. Right? And how do you go choosing venues and opportunities? And so it depends on what is the relationship or the appetite for the thing. Is it a partnership because we're partnering with a brand, I'll say a particular cinema, or is it's location and venue based? Or is it that because there's a community? There's all these different things that are budget, region, facilities, amenities, the players that we want to have included, the appetite of that, who's operating it. There's all these factors that come into something. Travel, hotels, location, right? Yeah. What goals and whose initiative is it? Yeah. Whose initiative is it? A publisher-led initiative that they want to do something and they're looking for X, Y, and Z, and that might fill one of the X, Y's, or Z's, or all of them, yes. Or is it Cinema Outreach that wants to do X, Y, or Z, and it all depends. So I think that there is an opportunity. It would be interesting to figure out what that ask is and the deliverables therein. So potentially, yes. Okay. There is something always exciting about in person, whether it's viewership parties or participation. There's always interest around activating around the games, but just how and why and what. If you think about online is so much more accessible. People don't need to leave. They can play at their leisure. There's no time and date destination that they have to go to. And then again, when you get there, what are the resources and facilities like? There's only one unit. Great, there's 300 of us. That's going to not be great.
Because I always think about the in real life ones. Since I've been a person that sold sponsorships and advertising for most of my professional career, I have found that brands and companies who are endemic to a particular industry like an opportunity where they can be with people. Because let's just use a monitor for an example. All monitors look the same when you're looking at something online. This one looks exactly like this one, until you're in person. All headgear, all mice, all keyboards, all the activities and peripherals that you would use look exactly the same. They just look like a picture. You have to touch them and try them. So I think personally that there's a great opportunity for these live ones, for these offers, these sponsors, these brand opportunities to come in and do activations, right? Because people are there, they can show their stuff, they can touch it, they can pick up the mouse.
And we try to stay away from absolutes. They don't all look the same.
Right.
I know what you're saying, but similar. Like there's some level of functionality and form that's missing when you're just looking at something as opposed to touching it, right? So there is always
a monitor company that said that to me, and I never thought about it before. But then I thought, I guess you're right? When you're looking to make a purchase on something, if you could see why it's better, it's like even TVs. If you look online and you're on Costco.com,
you're reading specs, right? All the specs and things, and some of that stuff is easier online and some of it's more difficult, right? So I would say, it depends on the product and such, but I don't think anyone discards the value of having hands-on opportunities with the product, right? And then there's nothing that sells like emotion. Right? Yeah. We all buy because we want something, we justify it with logic, right? Yes. So we use emotion to purchase, and then we're like, well, it's going to get way better fuel economy and all these things, and it's safer for the family if I buy this new car than if I just keep upgrading this one. And then we justify that even if it doesn't make financial sense or whatever the case is, realistically, right? And so in the same thing with like those impulse buys, and you're at an event and you want to take stuff away, swag, whatever that case is. Yeah, there's always those opportunities. It's the question of what are the KPIs or what's in scale. Yeah. So like the opportunity to get in front of 20 people, 20 very influential people, maybe better. It's all the scale. Or is it 2,000 people? Is it 20,000? What's our sell-through opportunities in those? So all these different factors come into that when you talk to a partner sponsor. How are you meeting their objectives for them? This is going to check off these boxes of opportunity. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just keep thinking if we're able to help support something that becomes a regular reoccurring Tuesday night, fill in the blank, whatever it is, then somebody that could potentially sponsor would know that they're having their message is being told again and again and again, and it builds that relationship, right? So these are things that I hope will help the cinemas as they're trying to do these programs and look for not just a one-off, because a one-off is usually a kind of expensive in the front and hard to recoup. Yeah.
But there's always value in those as well, right? Those are learning opportunities. And we're going to do this thing. We're going to experiment. Like I said, all the plans are worthless, but planning is great. So trying different things and experimenting with something, and you will take one-offs just to see, hey, let's measure that. Let's do whatever this reason is because we want to test it. We want to build something around it. Okay, cool. All right, next time, right? We know this or this or this. So those are always opportunities as well. But yeah, I don't think anybody would discount, frequency as important. It's like, yeah, it's very important.
So as we kind of go to wrap this down, I love all your insight. Is there any particular market or size, location that you think shines, or do you think they're all given an opportunity, should investigate this as something for potential future?
Oh, sure. Especially when we're talking about cinemas, right? Especially when we're talking about physical locations. I'm not going to suggest somebody goes like, you have already done your diligence and understanding of the market. And I would imagine, this isn't fact, but I would say a lot of the people that would go to movies are the same people that play video games. So you probably have a crossover. Now, the interest is, what kind of games do they play? Yeah. Who are they? Are they interested in community, or they play single player, whatever these things are? And could you create an experience that's meaningful enough for them to also attend for gaming events?
Yeah.
You convert in that way. So I think the markets are probably great where they're at. There's more or less, at the end of the day, we're talking about population density and interest, disposable income, all those different things that make sense for a good consumer, right? To come and be a part of a marketplace. But I would imagine, no, not any more interesting or not. It's certainly not from a macro view. When you look at like how a game developer, somebody looks at a market, they look very widely. They look at like North America. Now, not looking at Chicago, because that's not the way that the demographics are looked. They look at Europe and maybe some specific countries, but not normally to that granular detail, except when you're talking about server allocation. Do we have East and West? And there's some of those things, but not when you get into player bases and things. So back for the cinemas, it's very important where their locations are and being able to hopefully have enough people in density that it makes sense for them to be there in the first place.
And when you were doing your big events with some of the publishers you've worked for in the past, if you knew then what you knew now, would you think maybe you would have ever had some satellite events going on at cinema?
So the answer is yes, always. It all depends on as I said earlier, what are our requirements? What are we trying to accomplish? How many players? How many attendees? Budget, region, facilities, right? Hey, we need to put something in North America. We need to put something in Brazil or South America, wherever. And so depending on the type and kinds of events and what we're trying to accomplish, and this is for anywhere I've ever worked, it's what are we trying to do and what makes the most sense and fits in that way.
Right.
And so and you've got running events and then watching events. And I think there's still an opportunity and interest for watch parties and things, but what's that experience like? It's so accessible. I mean, and specifically so, publishers, people, organizers, everybody tries to make it as wide as possible. Watch it in every way, mobile, PC, whatever you want. Watch it where you want to on the different platforms, but just watch and be a part of it and engage in that way. And so, why would I leave my home? I've got a 50-inch monitor just here on my desk alone. Why would I leave my comfy chair and couch and this to come out to someplace? Got to be something with community, excitement, the experience, exclusives, something I couldn't get. I've gone to a few movie things where I've gotten posters or whatever. Maybe that's something, again, I always go back to experience. What is that experience for those attendees coming there? What is it like? Especially a gaming event. Those are long. Those are not programmatic where it's 2 hours in and out, 120 minutes plus lead in, cleaving out. It's not so simple.
So experience. So instead of location, it's experience.
You can make any location great by experience. I mean, but again, then it goes to how do people know that there's an experience? Marketing, right? So there's all these things that go into any business, right? It's all these different facets of what's our value proposition at the end of the day? How do we create awareness and engagement? Bringing all those things together to have a great experience that hopefully begets more because the people will talk and going, I did this awesome thing and it was so cool and you should come next time. Start bringing friends or telling other people and growing like that.
And then I got to, watch a movie, or I saw an advertisement for a movie that's coming out that I want to see. Yeah. That looks really, really cool, right? So now I want to go back to that location and see a movie, which is I think what the cinema's ultimate goal would be.
Yeah, it's a multiple offerings, right? I mean, maybe this changes, at some point, maybe theaters are more of an experiential component where movies are still a part of the business, but it's not only the business, right? It's not a theater in the traditional sense of the word. It becomes experiential with some other things. Perhaps, maybe not. I'm not advocating that they need to change.
That's what seems to be the conversation right now, is that they're having to rethink the business model and look for ways to be their own entertainment entity, right? And not just rely. It's like having one source of revenue isn't probably the smartest thing, right? It leaves them very vulnerable. So if they know now that they have other entertainment that they can provide, that a consumer who's thinking about entertainment goes, I want to go to that cinema because they have all these other offerings. I think that's going to help for the long haul.
Yeah, it just makes them more business proof. I mean, if you look at the way distribution rights are changing and, what's the future look like? What's 10 years from now? Are we still going to theaters? Probably. But what's the value proposition with these streaming platforms and things? And I think there's a lot of interest, how are we getting the 10-year-olds in 10 years who are going out on dates? How are we thinking about them and what's that experience? Because, maybe some of those properties aren't available in that way. And I don't know, there's a lot of uncertainty I feel in that particular space. And I go back to, I grew up in telecom. My dad worked in telecom. I worked in telecom so many years, and cell phones destroyed that industry as we knew it, right? How many people have home phone numbers now?
Yeah, nope, cut that cord.
Have any of those? Right? That was massive business. Yeah, that was massive business, right? And all those things. And now you can now you can just get internet because you don't even need phones and things like that. Even in call centers, right? Voice over IP phone systems. I mean, I think even puts in. I'll get super doofy techie, but the idea is business change. You look at Uber and Lyft and how they've revolutionized the ride sharing services and taxis and things like that. Technology and iteration will keep changing the marketplace. So I think this is one of the ways that they could innovate and keep staying ahead of that and have a different offering.
I love that.
Or more comprehensive offering, maybe not different, comprehensive.
I agree. So with that note, I'm going to thank you for your valuable time. I will put your contact in the chat or in the in the newsletter so people can get a hold of you. And I will see you at the next networking event. You're awesome. Your insight is great. And I'm sure people will look forward to getting to know you a little bit better.
Always, my dear. I'm always happy to help. So thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
See ya.